Contractors, welcome to a fresh episode of the Restoration Today podcast. I have an exciting guest with me today. I've been very excited for this interview. He and I were chatting at Elevate and was like, it's really time to do this, and it is. So I have Lance Malcolm with me. He is the president of Contractor Connection in the U.S. We're going to talk a lot of things about managed repair and the industry, what it looks like today, kind of the trends that he's seeing, cat events, supply chain disruptions, which is a huge conversation right now, of course. So kind of all the things. So Lance, thank you so much for joining us. I am very excited to have you here. So I'm going to toss it over to you to just kind of introduce yourself and share a little bit about your background.
Well, I'm excited to be here. Pleasure to get a chance to talk with you today, Michelle. It's interesting. Today is March the 13th, today that we're recording. And I actually celebrated my 35th anniversary in property insurance claims last week on March the
Wow.
5th, right? I joined right out of college and had an opportunity to work for a large insurance carrier for close to 20 years. And I worked in different roles. I was a multi-line adjuster, field adjuster, was in insurance claims management, was an agent, sold insurance for a carrier for a number of years, and then worked in senior leadership roles, different levels in the organization before leaving that company and becoming the vice president of claims for Citizens Property Insurance of Florida for 5 years before joining Crawford a little over 11 years ago. I just celebrated my 10th anniversary, 11th anniversary last year in September. And, it's been an exciting whirlwind career. I've enjoyed it. I love it. I enjoy what I do. Getting a chance to have perspectives on both sides of the coin, so to speak, has been something that I feel like has really helped me in my role here at Crawford and Company as the U.S. president for Contractor Connection.
Are you surprised, like looking back coming out of college, are you surprised 35 years later that you're still here? Like, I'm guessing most people don't leave college and think I'm going to be in the insurance and restoration industry for my whole career. That sounds like a great place to be.
It's interesting you say that. I have this conversation with folks from time to time, and I'll ask them. I'm always curious. How did you get into insurance? And now in 2025, I talk to more people who have a specific plan to go into insurance. Right? There's insurance degree tracks now that didn't exist 35, 40 years ago. In my particular case, my grandmother was a retiree from State Farm. She was a claims secretary for 35 years. And when I was graduating college, she said to me, I can help you get a job at State Farm as a claims adjuster. And at the time, I wanted to be in banking, and I was like, no, I am not going in insurance claims. I specifically was not going in insurance claims. But then out of the blue, Nationwide Insurance approached me. I had some friends and family that worked at Nationwide. They made me an offer, and I'm like, I'm going to go do that for a while, and then I'm going to go back to school, get my master's degree in economics. And I had this kind of idea of being a world economist. But once I got into the insurance claims industry, I realized what an honorable profession it is. And then working with contractors, how really they're putting people's lives back together, and you're helping people at probably one of the worst times of their entire life for them and their family. They never anticipated being in that place, and I just really just kind of, I guess, bought into it and decided this is what I wanted to do for my career. So it's
I
been a
think
whirlwind. It's hard to believe it's been 35 plus years. So
I think a lot of people can relate. I think once you're here, most people don't leave. Like, I feel like you're a lifer once you're in the industry. So, yep, I get it. Okay, before we kind of dive in, as you and I were prepping for this, we were talking a little bit about the term, like using the term managed repair program or whatever for contractor connection versus TPA or third party administrator. So, really quick, before we kind of dive in, can you explain what you see as like the difference between the two, why you might prefer one term over another?
so that's a great point, and I do kind of make that point with folks. Third party administrator, in my mind, is a very generic term. It just talks about an entity takes something and then does something with it and then gives it back. Um, in managed repair, it's all about creating end-to-end journeys. It's about creating connectivity for key stakeholders in a kind of a performance-based accountability framework that to me is much deeper and much more contextual than third party administrators. So, personally, I believe that what we do in the managed repair space is very intentional and is very impactful for all the key stakeholders, right? Insurance carriers, contractors, policyholders, property owners, and how do we differentiate that to create that kind of unique experience?
Sure. Okay, perfect. Thank you for that. Okay, so how have you seen managed repair programs and relationships evolve over the last decade? What do you see as some of like the biggest opportunities? This is twofold, I guess. What are some of the biggest changes, and then what do you see as some of the biggest opportunities as we move forward?
Yeah, it's interesting. So you asked, over the last 10 years, that's about the amount of time
Yep.
I've been part of Crawford, a little bit longer. And before that, spending 25 years on the insurance carrier side. I learned a lot from contractors over the years as an adjuster. I learned a lot about how to write estimates, how to scope damage, how to make repair versus replace decisions. I learned a lot from the carriers that I worked for in how to drive that right accuracy and how to get that right experience going on. And when I look at managed repair and kind of the last 10 years, when I think about it, what I've seen is technology just coming in like a freight train. We're working together to try to meet escalating customer expectations. Policyholders are more in their homes. There's being this drive to adopt technology as new technology is created, but then also using that technology effectively. And I've said this before, it's really challenging sometimes to evaluate that technology so that we're adopting the right technology, right? Because somebody could go in and just, every new technology that comes out, we're going to put that into the ecosystem and we're going to use it.
Yep.
But then we think about it and go back and look and say, well, what did that technology do? What is that technology going to do? And how are we going to use that to continue to be better at what we do? Better at the overall experience, the end-to-end experience, the better with speed and accuracy. So how quickly can we get out to someone's home or commercial property and start the mitigation process? How quickly can we understand what it's going to take to put that structure back to its pre-loss condition, to rebuild that life or that business? But then how do we do that with accuracy, right? Because that's super important that we're doing it in an accurate manner. We're documenting it. So the next improvements, really, from my perspective, are around how do we continue to enhance that experience, the delivery of speed of service, the accuracy of the estimate, the quality of the repair work being done, and the overall experience being delivered for carriers as carrier clients, as adjusters, as policyholders, property owners. Ultimately, we're trying to help those people get back into their home and at the same time enhance that overall key stakeholder relationship. The future really is, in my mind, is really about agility and adaptation, right? How do we continue to take that formula, that kind of foundational approach that we've developed, right? We know to rebuild a structure, what it takes to rebuild it. But then how do we adapt to a new environment and deliver it in a more successful way, balancing speed and accuracy and customer experiences for that long-term success?
Okay. All right. So in the realm of managed repair, there's always this conversation of trying to balance carrier requirements and contractor profitability. So kind of what's your take on how both parties can work together to truly make this more of a win-win for both sides?
Here's what I would say. First off, I believe that sometimes we think those are mutually exclusive
Yeah.
goals.
Yep.
And I don't believe they must be mutually exclusive.
Yep.
First got to get alignment, not opposition, understanding what carrier requirements are there for, right? What are they trying to accomplish as the insurance carrier, right? So first, their first goal is to deliver on their promise to their policyholder, right? I say that having been on that side for 20 plus years, being on the carrier side, and I've never once heard a carrier representative ever say we want X in exclusivity of Y. They want to be able to deliver their promise to their policyholder timely, in a meaningful way, and create an experience that policyholder values that relationship with their carrier, and that they're delivering the promise, right? When you pay for insurance, you're paying for a promise. It's intangible.
Hmm.
You hope to never have to use it,
Yep.
but if you do, you have expectations on what that delivery is going to be like. So, I think the first step is understanding that from a key stakeholder in that perspective. But then on the contractor side, the contractor is a business owner and they're a member of that community. And, they're likely to see that property owner going to the grocery store or going to church or taking their kids to school. So I think there's balances there that we have to take into consideration. And when we think about contractor profitability in its specificity of that statement,
Yeah.
a lot of people think about pricing. Oh, it's all about the pricing. It's all about the pricing. Some people think it's all about the scope. It's all about the scope. But really it's about balancing all these drivers.
Hmm.
And quite frankly, I'll be honest with you, I think another big component of it is contractors as business owners understanding their operational infrastructure and how do they create their greatest impact for profitability from how they run their business. Um, so to me, it's like any other business. It's about sustainability over the long term, success. How do we be profitable? Yeah, sometimes, yeah, I've got a new kind of saying that I've been sharing. It's like we get dealt cards. I got this from a book actually I was reading. We get dealt cards in a card game, and that might be a great hand or it might be a terrible hand. And we can either complain about the hand,
Hmm.
or we can take action and we can fold, or we can play that hand to its best possible outcome. So, in my mind, that question is about how do we determine what the best possible outcome is of that hand and then play the hand to that outcome. I don't think any of us wants to fold, right? Business owners are typically very competitive by nature and they want to win. So instead of thinking I can either fold or I can complain, how do I play that hand to its best possible outcome? How do we work together to get that alignment, not opposition, and seek that kind of win-win where we're mutually inclusive versus mutually exclusive?
You're totally right on what your statement about contractors needing to understand their numbers and that being a big part of the profitability equation. And there is a big push, I think, on the contractor side to understand your numbers better, and that will help. And there are contractors I know that do program work that understand their numbers very well, and it does work out just fine.
There are a number of network members in Contractor Connection that I've talked to over the years, in my 10, 11, 12 years here with Crawford, that have been part of Contractor Connection for 30 years. And they believe that they are very profitable and they've grown and they've leveraged that as an opportunity for growth, as a driver of growth. But I also recognize there are general contractors out there that don't want to do program work, and I respect that.
Sure.
It's a choice. Every business owner should choose how they want to grow their business, what's important to them, and then understand the framework in each of those paths. If I go down the path of managed repair, how do I do that? How do I operate in that framework? What is the framework? What's the requirements? How does cash flow in the repair space? How do I do that work? And my philosophy is if you understand the rules for the game, and then you take those rules onto the field with you and you put 150% into your work on the field, then you're going to win in the long run.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, so with the way weather is now, there's been a lot more large scale events, and there's also kind of this push, especially maybe after the California wildfires and hurricanes, for more maybe sustainable restoration and reconstruction practices, those kind of things. There's just differences in the repair process now. So, how is Contractor Connection kind of helping move the needle forward and support contractors and policyholders as kind of the restoration efforts happen after these large scale events?
No, it's interesting because every event is unique. We've got some really interesting dynamics going on right now between you've got Hurricane Helene and Milton in the southeast going all the way up into North Carolina and Virginia, with potential, work that still hasn't even been started. Then you've
Mhm.
got the Southern California fires and the uniqueness of that area, the challenges there. And then, right, the new season's already started. Right? We've seen, Winter Storm Lola and other storms come across the whole middle of the country. And to me, we've got to understand the regional construction challenges, right? So when I talk to network contractors in California and they talk about the difficulties of building on hillsides and
Hmm.
building out over the Pacific Ocean off of Pacific Coast Highway in Malibu, and building up in the Pacific Palisades area, and square foot prices for construction that are 10 times what you normally would see, driven by the unique nature of that. Then we need to better understand the logistics in the different areas, because building departments being able to get out and get permits issued, but engineers being able to get in, and the engineering differences in those areas, the logistics of materials and labor. And I think part of our role in this, at Contractor Connection, is that we want to be able to help contractors be successful. So how do we do that? We create a framework of performance, right? So perform in this way, and that creates standardization, consistency, right? An overall balance of that speed, quality, and accuracy that I was talking about. But then how do we understand what's going on in different areas to help the contractors in those areas to understand it, and then make sure we're educating clients too on what's going on and what are the unique challenges that are being faced from a repair, rebuild perspective. So I mean, to me, it's a lot of it is how do we tackle the challenges? First, we have to understand them. Second, we have to decide, kind of like my analogy about the poker hand, how are we going to, what's the best possible outcome? How do we play this the right way? Right? What cards do we fold? What cards do we keep? How do we get to the right place? Educate, so make sure everybody is educated and aligned. And then execution, how do we perform best to be able to ultimately restore and enhance businesses, lives, and communities in a meaningful way?
Okay. All right. So, all right. Next question, next kind of topic here, which is more timely, I think, than maybe either of us anticipated. We were going to talk a little bit about supply chain disruptions and then also labor shortages. Labor shortages are one of the top things that contractors constantly talk about. It's very hard to get labor. I just finished doing RA board of directors candidate interviews, and every single candidate this year, when they asked what top challenges were, it was getting paid and then also the hiring perspective. So, talking about managed repair and maybe contractor connection specifically, how can being part of a managed repair program help when there maybe are supply chain disruptions, especially maybe after a catastrophe and labor shortages? Like, how do networks help contractors overcome that?
No, it's interesting because there's different challenges in different areas,
Mhm.
especially when you're talking about some of the different types of geographies with these heavy volumes right now. Um, we've our process is built out, our framework is built out to kind of lay out, here's how we perform well as a group, here's how we perform well on an individual repair assignment, an estimate assignment, right? Get it right. I think first off, understanding the supply chain and helping contractors proactively manage that supply chain is really important. And each contractor, kind of develops their own kind of little supply chain, and they need to understand that. And then we need to help them where we can to understand the supply chain and how to manage it. Project planning, absolutely critical. Making sure that that project is planned out. And we have some technology out there that we use. Our contractors that are members of Contractor Connection use Job Track, and it helps us to create this transparency of what's going on and what the expectations are. So that project planning is key. And I know a lot of contractors have project management software, so they've got that element. So planning it out, scheduling materials, and getting tight in your scheduling process to make sure that when this subcontractor is going to be in, has to be in, how that fits with other projects, materials ordering, understanding materials that are going to be delayed for different reasons. I remember during COVID, garage doors and kitchen cabinets and windows became a challenge, right? Sometimes it was 8 weeks, waiting for materials. So don't wait until 2 weeks before you need them. Go order them 6 weeks before you think you're going to need them, and then they're going to come in together. So that tight scheduling, materials ordering, leveraging technology is huge. And I think that's the biggest place where we get a chance to really support is creating technology ecosystems that support that framework that we're putting forth, and helping the network contractor to be successful in that framework. and then be able to also support, but maybe not necessarily control, but be able to support that overall process, if that makes sense.
Yep, that does totally make sense. Okay, so kind of keeping in this line of overcoming challenges. Interest rates are high right now. Getting property insurance can be difficult in some markets. Carriers are pulling out of some markets, and costs are rising for markets where people can still get insurance. Are you seeing any shifts in policyholder behavior, and is that influencing how contractors approach manage repair?
Yeah, I don't know that it's changing necessarily the approach, but look, there are definitely, there's
Yeah.
rising insurance costs. I live in Florida.
Yep.
Definitely a challenging insurance market.
Yep.
I talk to folks in California. I'm like, hey, go look at Florida. We're about 15 years ahead of you.
Uh-huh.
So be aware, right?
Yep.
Understand. But let's be frank. Insurance is a business overall too. So that business is seeing rising costs also. Deductibles are going up. There's specialized endorsements going on out there. You hear about ACV policies on roofs,
Yep.
different policy direction taken to help to really, be successful for them too. So from a contractor perspective, we hear more about cash outs and we hear more about that. But where we can create that clear experience for that policyholder that they value, that they need, it's a challenging environment to be rebuilding your house. So I need help
Mhm.
making it less challenging, making it less scary, getting my family back into their home, my kids back into their school. They need that help. Are there dynamics out there in different areas where you see more cash outs going on or more people going and doing DIY or doing handyman? Absolutely. Do I think that'll increase? I think we'll continue to see that move and flow over time. But what we can focus on is there are absolutely property owners out there, policyholders, commercial and personal lines that want that support of a general contractor, of a trusted expert to come in and help them put their life back together.
Yep.
I think, you got the residential side, you've got the commercial side. Um, Homeowners bear those deductible costs directly, so it's very impactful for them. Commercial side, right? They're looking at their bottom lines too as a business, but how quickly can I get my business back up and running so that I can get back to my customers and right, not have a large, business income loss that's going on too. So everybody's got these different dynamics. I think a challenge is understanding all these different factors and then being able to be responsive to each one of them in some form or fashion.
Yep. Okay. I love it. Okay. So if you can pull out your crystal ball a little bit, I won't ask you to look super far into the future, but if you look a little bit into the future, you've talked about, agility and adaptation and those kind of key words as to how both contractors and networks and carriers can all kind of move forward together. What do you see as maybe the next evolution in managed repair, especially on the residential side? Where do you see this going now?
So my point of view, and I talk to a lot of folks on, general contractors, specialty contractors, commercial and personal lines contractors, folks that focus specifically in the managed repair space, or they have a mix, or they don't use, program work. Um, when I look at at where we're going, I think first technology is going to be huge.
Yep.
We're going to continue to see new technology come in that can enhance the process. And when I say enhance the process, I mean enhance the process for policyholders for sure, for
Mhm.
carriers definitely, but also for contractors. How do we leverage technology to enhance that speed and accuracy that I was talking about earlier, which then allows us to then balance in efficiency and human expertise. When you look at the automobile body repair industry, you can look and see what they did over, the period between 1995 and 2025. And, could there be a similar track for property repairs? Yes, to some extent. The integration of technology to help balance that out. But if you go look at that, they also have balanced out that human expertise also.
Mhm.
For those who pay attention to like J.D. Power's property claim study, they're very big on, yes, technology is important. Digital is huge and people want to use digital channels, but there are absolutely subsets of our population and times where different subsets of the population demand a personal human experience.
Yep.
So we have to have the technology to help us to balance out the efficiency, but then allow us to enhance that human experience, to really streamline the estimating process, balance out project management with transparency, communication. And again, it really is about creating a balanced equation of speed of service, accuracy of estimates, quality of the repair process, overarched with the customer experience.
Mhm.
Because at the end of the day, we're talking about people. We're talking about putting business owners back in their business, property owners back in their homes.
Yes. Okay. So a lot of what we've talked about so far has been kind of residential managed repair, but I know there's conversations now about commercial managed repair programs. So what do you see as the value proposition for contractors there, and what so far is the biggest hurdle to scaling a model on the commercial side?
Yeah, I talk a lot with contractors that are focused in the commercial space.
Yep.
Um, and again, it's a similar conversation to the personal lines contractors, right? They've got relationships. They work with carriers. They work with property owners, different commercial property owners. The value proposition is very similar to, on the commercial side, if not exactly the same. It's the same opportunity. How can we help contractors grow by creating that steady volume of commercial work in that kind of structured, performance-based accountability environment where we're all working together, and we're able to create a end-to-end journey,
Hmm.
right? Be able to take that policyholder from I've had a loss through how do we identify what needs to happen? How does it need to be put back together? How quickly can we get it back together to get you up and running? Um, but I will say that there's less of an understanding in the commercial world than is in the personal lines world. But quite frankly, that's where managed repair was 25 years ago, 20 years ago, 15 years ago. So we know, how to grow that understanding and elevate that set of expectations, I'll say, and we have to apply that. So it's about working together, ultimately delivering, again, speed, accuracy, quality, customer experiences with some tweaks for the commercial side, because commercial is definitely different, right?
Yes.
Different estimating, different construction methodologies, different construction materials in some cases, definitely different construction processes.
Yep.
And I think that's important to understand.
One of the key conversations that we've been having and has shown up in the state of the industry report over and over is more contractors wanting to move from residential to commercial or add more commercial work. So as we're talking about this commercial managed repair idea, what recommendations do you have for contractors who are like, oh yeah, I'd really like to start moving into the commercial space? What are some of the differences and how can they move in that direction in a good, effective way? That's a big question. I know you couldn't possibly fully answer it, but you know.
Well, it's a great question. It's an awesome question. It's actually one of my favorite questions of all the questions that we talked about. It's easy for somebody to say, you know, I make pizza today, but I want to become a dessert pastry chef. I bake today. I should be able to bake pastries.
Mhm.
But it's vastly different in a lot of ways. Very similar in a lot of ways, but vastly different.
Yep.
So first step is, somebody wanting to make that shift or venture into commercial from residential needs to really understand what's different, right? There's elements of skill, knowledge, and ability that transfers over, but then there are skills and needs that on the commercial side don't necessarily exist on the residential side. So they need to go into it really understanding and learning. So go out and do your research, right? Understand what the differences are from a construction techniques, from a materials, perspective, so that you can capture those significant differences. Then operational infrastructure, right? The operational infrastructure has to be adapted to handle the unique complexities of commercial construction. It's not as simple as just send out my crew and have them go tear out the wall and put back a wall. A lot can be different. The way electrical is done is different.
Yep.
The engineering is different. The plumbing is different.
Yep.
If you're putting in a restaurant versus a light manufacturing or just a retail space or just going in and building out a doctor's office or an attorney's office or a realtor's office. So how do we have the right operational infrastructure in place to be able to do that? And a lot of the really good folks that do that, they separate it and they have different divisions of their company that do commercial versus personal lines. Project management is different. Understand how a commercial project flows. Subcontractors can be different, right? I mean, there's a lot of differences that it's not like just changing out the car. It's like flying a plane versus a car. Similar characteristics, right? They're mechanical, they have an engine, but you got to understand how planes fly versus how cars drive, right? Before you do the two different things. Financial readiness, I think, is really important.
Yeah.
Understanding the differences between personal lines and residential and commercial. It obviously on the personal line side you get more frequent losses, so you don't have as much frequency in commercial, but much bigger losses often can happen. And sometimes you got to have a different set of financial capabilities to be able to navigate that. And I'll just give you a quick example. So 7 years ago we had an assignment come in that somebody wanted to build out a pizza franchise location in Boston, of all places. And we went to our network, we identified a contractor, said, would you like to do this? They said, yes, we can do that. And there was some struggle up front, right? There was some struggle because they didn't know how long it takes to get a permit to go build out a restaurant in Boston. And that took extra time. They didn't anticipate it, so they didn't set that expectation. And then as they were redoing this build out, they realized they knew they had to put in a pizza oven, and they knew they had to put in, the grease traps and, the seating area, and then the cash register area. What they didn't understand was there were some pretty unique requirements in Boston on putting in a grease trap and how that has to be designed and how it has to flow. Bottom line is that ultimately we got it done. We all worked together and we got it done. But if we'd have gone into that knowing what those differences were, those challenges were going to be, and planning for them up front, it would have been a much smoother process for everybody involved. So it's just a great example of understand what you're trying to do, what could be different, how do I account for that, make adjustments for it, and then I can go execute based on what that plan is.
Perfect. I love it. That was a great example. And yeah, building in different cities, there's always hurdles. It's always different in commercial.
Yeah, you may be great even at building something in it, but doing it in Boston versus Jacksonville, Florida versus Des Moines, Iowa, it could be totally different in those three places.
100%. Okay, so there is always this conversation on the contractor side of managed repair has so many requirements. There's two sides of the argument here. I hear from contractors all the time, well, if you can meet the requirements of managed repair and do it well, you're going to do well in any job that you can take on because you're going to have really good processes in place. There's the other side of the coin that's like, there are too many, the requirements are too rigid. There's too many requirements for me to even excel at program work. So what's your answer to that when somebody comes to you and is like, there's too many things. Will you ever ease up? Like, is this really necessary? Those kind of questions.
No, this is a tough question. I get it, right? I think, there are there's thousands of contractors in the world, in the country. And they built their business to do what they do the way they do it. And then we come in and say, okay, that's great, but here's what you got to do to be successful in managed repair. It's not about creating rigidity necessarily, but it's about creating more standardization of quality and consistency, right? Consistency so that if, I liken it to a conversation that we used to have, at one of the carriers I worked for. We would talk about, we have thousands of adjusters across the country. How do you deliver the McDonald's experience, right? You walk into a McDonald's, you know what your Big Mac's going to taste like because I can go to a McDonald's in Miami, I go to a McDonald's in Los Angeles, or anywhere in between, and it's going to be a Big Mac, right? It's going to taste the same. Fries are going to be the most awesome fries ever because I love McDonald's French fries. But
Yes.
But how do you do that in a general contracting world? And I think that's where, the managed repair program is about creating that level of consistency that then a carrier client can feel comfortable in allowing us to be an extension of their brand. Because
Mm-hmm.
that's what we're asking them to do. We're asking them to let us be an extension of your brand and help you deliver the promise I was talking about earlier in a way that fits what you do, right? And it looks like the experience of your policyholder has with you. So we're creating this consistency, and that's what the framework is about. It is flexible. Now, we're not going to create individual flexibilities for every single member of the network and say, you can do it this way, you can do it that way, and by the way, you can do it a third way over there if you want to do it a third way. But it is flexible in the extent of how do we do what's right at the same time. So creates that kind of consistent quality, do what's right, but then maintain those high standards that if I'm turning my relationship with Jim over to you to be my proxy, I need to understand that what Joe's going to experience or Jim's going to experience is going to be what he experienced if he was dealing with me directly.
Mm-hmm.
So we have to have high standards. We have to have that capability to give that comfort level to everybody, all those key stakeholders. And then we incorporate that flexibility. We look at contractor capabilities, so we're not telling every contractor you have to do everything. But we do go and ask, can you do this? Can you do that? Can you deliver this service? And then we give them the opportunity to see this is how it's going to work. And if they say, I don't want to do that, then it's okay. I appreciate that. We respect that. And, then maybe we can't work together. I don't think it's a situation where we need to I don't think any of us is going to create an environment where everybody wants to work with everybody all the time. We just make decisions, learn, make decisions, and then we respect each other's decisions and then move forward.
Sure. Okay. That makes sense. All right. Well, Lance, anything else you want to add before we wrap it up? I appreciate your time very much.
No, I appreciate your time as well. I appreciate the opportunity to join you. And I think we've covered a lot of great topics today. I tell contractors that I talk with at all of our different events and out at different conferences, reach out to me anytime. If you want to talk about managed repair, you talk about contractor connection, I'd love to have a conversation with you. Ask your questions, learn, and then make the decision that works best for you. I believe we can be great partners. I believe that as key stakeholder partners, we can achieve great things. We can be that driving force really to enhance lives, businesses, and communities. That's very meaningful, in my mind and the team that I work with. And it's about us working together to do that.
Yeah. All right. Well, Lance, thank you so much. I appreciate your time. I look forward to seeing you at some shows, including your own, in the next few months. We are into show season, so I'm sure we'll cross paths a few times. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Have a great day.
For more Restoration Today and the latest news, visit our website, cnrmagazine.com, and find the latest episodes of the Restoration Today podcast on your favorite podcasting platform.